Okay, we're recording now.
Okay, wait, is it actually the fifth?
Yes, it is the fifth one.
Okay. Okay.
Great intro.
Welcome to the fifth Theory Crafting Roundtable podcast, guys. Once again, I'm Artesians, and I will be kind of host for today. I'm joined by Azel, Tenten, and it's Lobo. Unfortunately, Jinx and Zajif could not make it today, but we will carry on without them. This week's topic is particularly, I would say, interesting, at least for discussion's sake. It's about Genshin's endgame and Genshin as its design as a game. Whether or not we think it's good or bad. Yeah, if you guys want to introduce yourselves, you can also give your opening statements, thoughts, and stuff like that. I kind of want to get started with what we think, what we personally perceive as what the end game is. It's particularly personal kind of thing.
Okay. We should probably do an introduction for Lobo real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what's up? I'm Lobo. I am a professional game designer. I like how Tenten rounded me up to 5 years. Yeah, you can find out where I work by finding me on social media. It's Lobo everywhere, but I'm usually on Twitter anyway. Yeah, so I'm just here to kind of provide a game designer's perspective and kind of talk about how we think about things and what I think Genshin is doing well and what Genshin is doing more poorly. And that's no flame. Every game does certain things well and certain things poorly. I think Genshin is a really dope game overall. So I'm not trying to throw shade or anything.
Okay.
All right, very nice.
Yep. To be honest, I'm lazy to do the rest of the introduction nowadays because we do it every single time. So
Okay, all you need to know: Artesians, head of KQMTC, also streams on the KQM Twitch account. 1010 scuffed streamer. Me, I do TC. Done.
okay. Alright, so you can take over. Yep.
I mean, I'm gonna take over. Okay. I guess I'll just start with my opening thing. Personally, the end game in Genshin is pretty esoteric for me. There's kind of this hole of investment where you can just dump time and time and time into to get better and better artifacts, but you don't actually need. If you play efficiently, there's not really that much need to go so far to clear the abyss, which is what I would say the majority of Genshin players would consider the end of the game. Besides specific events like the Labyrinth one at the highest difficulty, or even the Vagabond event, times where Genshin really pushes you hard to have constellations or weapons or well-rolled artifacts is pretty far and few.
I guess I can tag onto that. To me, Genshin Endgame is it's just practically being able to clear every single available content in the game, which most of the time it's 36-star abyss, but also occasionally include our event, or I like to call them the challenge quest from the event, which is a terminology carried over from FGO. Basically, it's a specific part of the event that's designed to be very difficult, which are, as described, the current Labyrinth event with the highest difficulty, or Vagabond by doing I don't know if max point and 7,000 points is the same thing. I don't particularly remember. I think max point is not exactly the, so I guess max point Vagabond, yeah.
I think, I guess my stance on Genshin Endgame is it's both being able to 36-star abyss do it consistently, but also being able to do it with the characters that you want to. Because I guess you can make the argument that just being able to clear the hardest content in the game is technically endgame. But I think there's also something to be said just because Genshin is kind of like a waifu collector, husband collector game. That the like being able to clear it how you want aspect does like hold some appeal for a lot of people. So I guess it's just those two parts: clearing hard content, but also clearing how content how you want to.
Right. Like I
Um,
think endgame is it's what every player wants it to be. Whatever what you make of it, and it's like the game designer's job to provide like a variety of satisfying activities. So for Genshin, like I can see that there would be like several levels of it, where for some people it's just clearing the story and then they quit until there's new story. For some people it's clearing Abyss. For some people it's maxing out their favorite character, and then for some people, I don't know, it's trying to get a 10-second clear of Abyss 12-3 or whatever, like the people at Golden House do. Like there's definitely like lots of different levels.
What do you think of the current end game at the moment? Do you think does it meet that? I guess it's the first topic we can talk about. Like, I guess the question is here is like, is the current end game of Genshin Impact satisfying? If that's the right way to put it.
mm,
For me, not really, but like, does it really need to be? Like, if you think about the type of game Genshin is trying to be, like it's obvious that they're kind of going for like mass appeal, casual. Like I don't know their stats, but I would imagine that like a very significant portion of their player base is mobile only. So, like, I think I'm not like as a more hardcore player really satisfied with it, and they're probably not satisfied with it, which is why you can see them experimenting with things like the Labyrinth and Vagabond. And like if like the Labyrinth, for example, I think it's very clear that they're like toying with it as an end game thing, even with the story, with like the little paper doll saying like, oh yeah, now you can train in this, and so like they're kind of leaving their doors open to bring it back. But it's also the question is like, is it really worth their time to like invest a bunch of dev resources into improving the end game when they could just be making more new characters and more new areas and stuff, which just might like all of the people like us who are like is it 9-star? Yeah, I guess 9-starring the final Abyss. They've already like gotten a bunch of time and money out of us. And so like, does it really matter? Do they really need to take care of us when they could just make Sumeru and then get a bunch of people to start playing again or to come back when that stuff comes out?
I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. I definitely agree that Genshin is a game which is more casual focused. They're not really looking at the end game players, but I think it kind of also does run into some kind of an issue for me, Hayo. Like you were saying, I guess they probably also want there to be end game because whales who play the game a lot are like a very significant portion of Genshin's revenue. And I guess like they still do get their money from the casual free to play people in the form of like battle pass and welkins, which a lot of people who aren't hardcore players will buy. But a lot of their money also does come from like the very hardcore players, the speed runners who spend a lot of money on the game. So I guess it's just kind of difficult for them to both be a like mass appeal casual game, but also like remain, I guess, got a gotcha game where a large portion of your revenue just comes from hardcore players.
I actually don't know what make gacha games so much money. Is it that people like to gamble for the character, or do people just like to pull for character because they're cute looking? Like, let me put it this way: how does FGO make money, or other gacha game? Do people actually like? Is it actually from the people who care the most about the character strength, and therefore they pull for the whale version of it, or just from people who like waifu and design to pull for characters? I actually don't know. Do you know by any chance, or do you have a guess?
It really depends on the game, and it also depends on like the era of gacha games. Like FGO's era, like they definitely like FGO is a game that is definitely geared towards whales, and I think they make a bunch of money. And I mean, like even if you're like not, we're not limiting to like the kind of premier East Asian gacha games like FGO, Genshin, Arc Knights, Summoner's War, Epic 7, whatever. Like there are some mobile games that are literally kept afloat by like 2 or 3 players who spend like $10,000 a month, right? But I think like more recent gacha games are like in Genshin actually I think is an example of this. Like if you look at Genshin's monetization strategy, right? Like Welkin and the Battle Pass are ridiculously efficient compared to top ups. So I don't think Genshin actually is really going for whale revenue, and I it doesn't. My guess would actually be that they would rather make money from a lot of people buying the battle pass and Welkin than from a couple of people like super whaling out. I mean, obviously, there's still C6 5 stars and all that, so like they're kind of like if you want to give us all that money, they're happy to take it. But I don't think that they're like particularly going for whales, especially relative to like other gacha games like FGO or whatever.
Yeah, that makes
In
sense.
my opinion, like, I think it's still definitely catered towards whales. As much as like the Welkin and Battle Pass are efficient, if we're thinking like logistically, right? If a low spender is buying the Welkin and the Battle Pass, that's like $20 every cycle, right? 2 Welkins and a Battle Pass. Or no, it should be $15, right? Compare that to like someone who's pulling for something like C2 Raiden and her spear. That player is literally like 10 times, 20 times, 30 times like dumping more money than the person who's just buying the Welkin and stuff. And this isn't like something. I think this is one of the things that Genshin is actually really well designed about. Is like they don't always put the best constellations super late. There's some units of the game that have like the new term in the community is like dolphin friendly, right? So like if you want to splurge like $400, you can get like C2 3 Raiden, and I'm pretty sure like it's definitely still a whales game, like in terms of revenue.
Yeah, I mean the other thing also is that like it's all unnecessary, right? Like nothing in the game is really that hard. You can easily clear Abyss 12 without any 5 stars. You don't need any constellations on anybody really. Well, I guess maybe you need like whatever the OP constellations are on like XIANGLING or whatever. Like in comparison to like other gacha games where like if you imagine like if Genshin had PvP for example, like then if you want to be competitive in PvP, you'd have to pull for like the high constellation 5 stars because otherwise you'll get smacked by somebody else who has them and stuff like that. I'm not advocating for. I think Genshin is like you'd have to like redesign the whole game to do PvP, but like that's one example of like the game isn't really like really pushing you to do these huge spending things.
Yeah, I'd also agree. Like, it's not that difficult to clear content. I think the main reason why people keep on spending though is just because like FOMO in some sense. Like, if I don't get right in C2, I'm gonna regret it because it's so powerful. And
Yeah.
there's also like definitely a social aspect to Genshin. I think that is maybe it's prevalent in other games, but I haven't actually seen other games have like anywhere near as large of like a community as Genshin is. When your friends are all like rolling for C2 right and your friends all
Yeah.
have C1 Hu Tao, it feels very bad to not have those constellations, to not have that kind of power.
Totally. And actually, I mean, Genshin, I think, could like leverage this even more if they like wanted to, right? Because like in FGO, you use a support unit from one of your friends in every single fight, right? So like, there's like this pressure to like, you know, pull hard on somebody and like trick them out so that you can stunt your friends. Like, so could you imagine if like, you know, you like C6'd somebody and then you could like lend that unit to your friends so they could clear Abyss, right? Then that would add like a huge
Ooh.
incentive to pull, right?
Oh, that would be so huge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually I'm a little confused why they haven't done that because I think that would make them a ton of money.
It's interesting because they do
Yeah.
that for the expedition event. It's like you can borrow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
from
for the
the
expedition
expeditions.
event, which is like, but who gives a shit about
But
that,
you actually
right?
use the units, and it's like
Oh, that would be so huge. Can you guys? Oh my god, that's actually, see, this is the thing that we don't think of, but game designers do. I think it's pretty.
Well, it's
People are
also
saying-
just because I've played like a kajillion gacha games, and so I'm like, oh well, they should just do this thing that this other game did.
people are saying
because, you
stop
know.
giving me all your idea in this chat. But yeah,
No, that would be sick. I have literally all the pieces for Morgana and just desperately waiting for a Ganyu rerun. I even have fucking Amos. I just don't have Ganyu.
yeah. I think that would actually be more beneficial for the player base, because if you're free to play, you can just borrow a whale character, and if you're whale, you get to flex on the free to play and help them out at the same time. It's people say, I don't know, people think it's a bad thing in the chat, but I actually think it's not a bad idea. That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah, potentially maybe like doing that for a Vagabond event in the future,
yeah.
where you actually have that kind of difficulty where you would probably want to borrow like a C6 Ganyu or something.
In some
Would be
sense,
interesting.
Vagabond even is already like that, where you just go to some whale streamer stream and be like, can you carry me please? And in that sense, you're kind of borrowing their strength just in a different way. But you know, letting you play the character gets you the experience of playing that character, and then it baits you into eventually rolling for that character. Yeah.
That's
Wait,
true.
could you co-op in Vagabond? I wasn't playing when that event
Yeah,
happened.
you can co-op. So people
Oh.
would go to whale
Oh,
streamer
if your
stream.
friends had a C2 Zhongli. Oh yeah.
Yeah, people would go to like your friend or mostly whale streamer, because they're doing like Vagabond carry on stream, and then they would just like one shot the boss for you. That's how people get through those things.
Yeah, but co-op in Genshin is weird, right? Because like the entire combat system is based on switching, and so like if you have two people, then you like immediately it's like playing an MMO and you give up half of your class's buttons, which
Ooh.
is just
Mhm.
weird.
This could be a
Yeah, it's
interesting topic after it's like Genshin combat design.
yeah, we
Right.
can try and talk about that later as well. I think it's kind of like that. I think maybe it's more similar to like removing half your buttons for theory crafters and like people who hardcore play the game, because people who like casually play the game just don't know how rotations work really. They don't really know like I need to switch to X character at Y time in order to get more buffs. So for them, maybe there's not a big difference, but for hardcore players, there probably is a big difference.
Yeah. I think. Oh, I guess we can just do that now instead. Unless our teacher have ending thought on the Genshin monetization things.
I mean, in terms of endgame, like we say, like you don't need to like have these units or whatever. But I mean, if you pull like any casual player, you will find like that people will spend money based on the recommendations and the things that they see on social media, like on YouTube, on Twitter, on like TikTok or whatever. They will spend their money on like units and stuff because they think that like constellations and 5-star weapons are like the end all be all. No. And currently it really isn't a case if we're talking strictly just about the Abyss. But you know, that's about it.
I think there's a little bit of a difference there because like this is like kind of community expectations being built up, whereas like I played a ton of Epic 7 and like Epic 7 would have a boss that says I'm gonna put 2 stacks of poison on your entire team every single turn, and if you don't have somebody who can cleanse all of it, you're totally fucked. And then it's be like, well, you have to have a unit that cleanses it or you cannot kill that boss, right? There's nothing like that in Genshin.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I guess there's
I don't
that
think that
thing as
matters. I actually don't think that really matters. Like a unit being like, there's no unit in Genshin that will automatically clear everything for you. Even C6 units cannot do that by themselves. The fact of the matter is like, though constellations can raise your ceiling, the artifacts raise your floor by so much.
Yeah.
On top of that, like even if there's no selective pressure for you to like pull for anything, like just literally just YouTube or Google like Genshin content. Those are the pressures that are pushing people to pull for constellations and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even look at things like Hu Tao's guide or like Hu Tao's rerun here. Every single guide will mention C1 and Staff of Homa. This is a significantly more costly endeavor than it is just pulling, C0. And then it's a known thing, we're all waiting for the Ganyu rerun. Like, this rerun is going to be literally the biggest rerun, probably the biggest and best-selling banner. And Raiden was already ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess the question then is like, what level of casual is consuming this sort of content? Because like, there's an argument to be made, like, for example, anybody watching like a Kaching mains, consuming any Kaching mains content is like, even in a conservative estimate, in like the top 5%, probably more like the top 1%, right? But like, I don't really know. I'm a fucking boomer now. I don't know how like the kids consume like video game media nowadays. I've like don't go on TikTok or anything, so like I don't really know if like the average Genshin like casual player in China or whatever is like consuming a lot of Genshin content,
That's fair. Yeah, I don't really use TikTok either. What I do know of TikTok though, since Sempi, who's one of the other KU staff, has a fairly large TikTok following. The content that tends to be really popular is just whale content. Like, I think one of Sempi's most watched videos is one where he just does like 600k damage with Chi Burst.
What?
So,
Does that even do damage?
Yep.
This is kind of getting into a gray area, but I'll have to be honest. Currently, all the popular Genshin content creator are majority whales. Especially, there's a lot of whale showcase, and people really love them. Especially with Tony Toe, who, if you don't know about Tony Toe, he is a Chinese content creator who exclusively do large number showcase through buff stacking and stuff. The only thing he does is 30-second clip where you just stack every single buff in the game and you fish for a crit with your like 1% crit rate, and then do like a very, very big number.
Yeah, and I guess then the question is like, what percentage of people view content like that, and then like that raises their expectation level for what they think they should be doing in their own games, versus what percentage of people are just like, oh haha, that would be cool if I could blow $10,000 on this game, but I can't, so oh well, I can vicariously live through that.
It's very hard to define it. I mean, we can only speculate, because in general, like, the gacha game market in Asia is like significantly more saturated, but the percentage of players that play them are like whales, like whales. So, and I don't believe we have any sales numbers in like the Asian markets that are particularly very accurate.
Yeah.
And there's no comprehensive data or anything like that.
Even the graphs that get passed around social media, they're always like, oh, it's China, but it's iPhone only. And I'm like, okay, so it's like 25% of the Chinese market. Great.
I'm actually curious how, well, aside from how accurate those graphs is, I'm curious about the recent, this is, I guess, kind of lead into it, but like, Hu Tao have apparently very high sales number, and it's higher than Raiden. And the trend I'm noticing here is Raiden and Hu Tao are, without a doubt, I think the two best-selling banner, and the correlation here is that they both have very good constellation very early on. For Hu Tao, this is constellation 1, and for Raiden, this is constellation 2, potentially 3. And I wonder if these are a huge contributing factor.
Yeah, it's LG Homa as well.
And yeah, the bigger thing, I'm kind of, since we're on the topic of monetization, it's like I'm worried this gives MiHoYo the incentive to keep doing it, things like this. They see the Raiden C2 selling really well. They know that people are willing to drop a medium amount of money for a very powerful constellation, and this has proven to work on Raiden and Hu Tao. So will this incentivize MiHoYo to continuously push new character with early constellation that is just extremely powerful, and we can at that point call character constellation log.
I'm not sure it's actually the constellations in these two cases, right? Because there's another like thing that's common between Hu Tao and Raiden, which is that they are both like very powerful characters who are also very appealing, right? Like both Raiden and Hu Tao are like they're cool, entertaining characters. Like Raiden's got like really awesome VFX and like she's got the story and all of that stuff, and she's got the booba sword, so people are gonna like that. And then Hu Tao obviously like is a really entertaining character, and also has like that meta strength too, right? So like you could make the argument also, like you could make the same argument and say that, oh, MiHoYo will look at that and say, oh, I mean, it's obvious, like, if you're making a gacha game, it's kind of table stakes to say, oh yeah, we want to make really appealing characters who are also really strong and fun to play. So, you know, but I don't necessarily think they're going to be looking at this and being like, oh yeah, we got to, like, juice the constellations. Although maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't, when you look at interviews with MiHoYo devs, like, at least the people who are, like, making the content, I don't really get the sense that they're, like, super, like, predatory business minded. They just seem like, you know, like I was watching the video of like them, the Dragon Spine video, and they're talking about like, oh yeah, they went through 10 different versions of the snow to find snow that was the perfect one. You know what I mean? Like I don't like think that they're necessarily gonna be like super greedy, but maybe, I don't know. I mean, I don't work there. I don't know what it's like.
My personal theory is they had these two banners in a row, just because they want people to like get used to whaling, because maybe a free-to-play player was able to save up enough for Raiden C2 without spending a significant amount of money. But now they also throw in Elegy Homa and Hu Tao, which incentivizes people to spend even more money, and they don't have any money to spend because, or I mean, they don't have a like free-to-play premiums because they spent it all on Raiden, so now they have to spend it on Homa and Tao. At least that's my theory. Just like get people into the, like get people spending money once so that they get more comfortable with it next time. But that,
Yeah,
that's kind of like an evil way of viewing it. Like,
I mean, that's a very standard tactic though in mobile games. Is like, this is why they have like the double bonuses on the first top ups and all of that. It's like very well known that if you can get somebody to spend money once, then they're much more likely to spend more money. So yeah, that's probably something that they're thinking about.
I mean, we can move on from the monetization talk. We kind of deviated from like the end game, but
yeah, I feel like we're kind of meandering a little bit.
Yeah,
I think
that's fun. That's
I
what
mean,
podcasts
they're
always
kind of
are.
intrinsically linked here. It's like you have an end game that's perceived to be very difficult, and then people show off on social media, or the impression of the community is that if you spend money, blah 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 blah, you can clear whatever you want. It's like a confluence of all these things. But in terms of like a true end game, I'm not too sure. Like, the next question we have is like the abyss getting too hard too fast? Things like this make my statement earlier that like you can clear the abyss without like constellations and like 5-star weapons, but for people that don't have the time to like grind for artifacts and stuff like that, it's becoming less and less true with each patch.
Did you 36-star Abyss already, Lobo? I know when you cleared it.
Yeah, I did. I don't have as good of a perspective on this because I first played when it came out and I quit and I like didn't really do much. I got to like, I don't know, I got my Idyllic to level 70 or something, and then I came back during Yoimiya's banner. And I 36 starred in like, I don't know, I can't remember. It was the Abyss with PMA at the end. But also I have a C4 rated, and like that makes things really easy for me. So I don't fucking know. Like she just fucking stomps everything, and then I have to figure out what to do with my other side.
Yeah, so Abyss has been progressing a lot, and we have like a chart about the DPS you need to clear it between each abyss, and I think right now it's, let's say, double in comparison to the very original abyss. I don't actually, I can pull up the chart real quick from, but I feel like we wiped the chart so far up because we have been spamming the channel chat.
I haven't.
Oh, can you resend so I don't have to scroll?
It's in general, yeah.
Okay, so this is the, let me show the stream too. So this is the chart that we're talking about before. And in the original abyss, it's 18k DPS that you need if you're doing single target damage, and now it's exactly double. And for AOD it's 8,000, and now it's 14k. So it's like about double from the very original abyss to now in both cases. Actually, it's like about double amount of damage that you need. This is not including any of the more annoying mechanics that they started to introduce. For example, for PMA that you have experienced it, there are transition animation, there are faces. So these are
there's like Magu Kenki with all of its iframes.
Magu Genki with iframes, with the animation, with all the teleport. So the actual number, when you start considering those, is starting to get harder and harder. So currently, us Theory Crafter think Abyss has gotten to the point where you have to play meta unit in order to as in, assuming you don't have like a whaled out unit, then you have to play meta unit in order to, I don't know if having a chance to clear is the right word. I don't know if you would say like you can reliably clear Abyss with meta unit. I actually think having a chance to clear Abyss is the better word here.
I think in order to clear it comfortably is how I put it.
Yeah, if you want to clear Abyss comfortably, you have to use meta unit, which fortunately many of them are 4 stars actually, which are like Bennett, Xingqiu's, and XIANGLING, for example, which I know you're aware of those strengths. And I remember this is Lobo messaged me once upon a time, but like Xingqiu's and Bennett are like 2 strongs.
I mean, yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, so we can talk about the Abyss first.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, like this is it. This is what we consider endgame.
Yeah.
And it's problematic for, I would say it's problematic for people that are either not that invested in the game or too invested in the game. For people that are not that invested, it's like unapproachable. The 9th and 10th floor are like prohibitively difficult, and it's pretty hard to clear them without like actually looking up like and understanding the game and stuff, which is fine. That's what I would expect out of like difficult content. But on the other side, if you have well invested units and you clear like the Abyss, you can probably clear the next Abyss, and you can probably clear the one after that, and it only gets easier as long as you like keep investing into like the units that you're using to clear. And I don't know, it kind of like, for me, I've been clearing the Abyss since like March. It doesn't really get more entertaining for me. I don't really feel happy when I clear the Abyss. In fact, I probably get more angry playing in the Abyss than I do just doing like anything else, because the mechanics are just that frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not very interesting, right? It's just a DPS check. And there's no pressure even, because resetting is so free that like you're not even under a lot of pressure to like execute correctly, because if you fuck it up, you just go next. So like, I mean, there's like a number of issues with it, I think.
What do you think?
I think,
oh, let's go for it.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that even though like it's easy for theory crafters, people who play meta, to clear this, I'm kind of interested in what people who, I guess, like don't play meta characters think about Abyss, because my personal stance on what I think is happening with Abyss is they're making Abyss steadily more difficult at a rate which outpaces your ability to invest in units. So if you're already clearing Abyss pretty comfortably, maybe you'll notice that this abyss is more frustrating than other ones. But it's not like you're not going to be able to clear abyss. But if someone was playing a very like off meta team, I don't know, like Xinyan, Chi-Chi, Lisa, Aloy. Not that like those units are individually bad, but that team itself just I mean, some of those units are pretty bad, but that team just does not have a lot of synergy. So it's just like for those people who were 36 starting Abyss previously with that, are they going to be running into issues where they just all of a sudden aren't able to clear Abyss anymore? Um, and like, I guess, how does that make them feel? Do they feel incentivized, like, oh, now I have to play meta? Or do they like feel the need to wail or whatever?
I mean, you could ask Terrapin, but I think they're a exception that proves the rule when it comes to off meta.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
Terrapin's more of a like person who makes new metas rather than like really plays off metas, I think. Because like Terrapin's comps are unique, in that they're not like what is in the Genshin meta, but they're not bad by any means at all.
yeah.
Like
So
the
like,
Sukoko,
Sucrose
whatever.
comp.
Yeah, that
there's a
comp is like
difference
pretty strong.
between like there's a difference between like a well theory crafted comp and then like a truly meta composition, I think. So like Tenten, for example, only clears with National and Ganyu like Ganyu Venti, right? Um like those are like meta teams, right?
Right. Yeah, like international
And
and
yeah, these are the
Morgana.
types of teams that will like almost always be able to clear. It is like it with the correct amounts of investment and stuff like that. It's very difficult to not be able to clear with these comps. They're just strictly like the units synergize so well together that it is like you have to try to not be clearing with them. Um, granted that you know how to use them and all that stuff, but like for things like Terrapin or even like the comps that I used to use quite a bit, um, well, theory crafted comps can still scrape by. The difference is like, can the units that are like really falling behind in relation to like newer units, can these types of units reliably keep up? And one of like the things like that's really sad is like someone like Toma right now doesn't have a role in the game like at all, other than being like manipulated by Kazuha and Hu Tao to be relevant, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, and he falls into like the same purgatory as like Shinyan. That's like that's the sad part.
I think their problem here is that there are like two crowds of people that have differing needs that they're trying desperately to keep happy, right? Because like there's one crowd of people who are the people who've been playing since launch. Maybe they're whales, maybe they're not, but they're clearing Abyss and they want new shit to do, and so they have to like keep raising the bar, right? Because games like this, you have to be chasing something. If you like attain the most power, like as soon as there's no way to improve or no reason to improve, then these games become boring and people are going to churn. So they probably feel like they have to keep making the Abyss harder to keep those people entertained, right? But then there's like new players who come in, and then like yeah, they have an experience kind of like me where I wasn't a new player, but I was like returning, and I was like, oh cool, going through the Abyss. Like I remember the first Abyss cycle I came back, I was like kind of chilling, and then I ran into the hypostases. I think one was cryo and the other was pyro, and I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do about this? And I just like I like got all the stars and then just zero starred the like I think it was 11-3 at the time, because like I just like it was such a giant jump
Character
up
check.
from like yeah, from what was previously there. And so I think they've kind of made the decision that it's more valuable to serve the players who have been sticking with the game the whole time. And I think, you know, when it comes to like new players, they're kind of throwing their hands up and being like, we'll figure something out. And then they're I don't know, they're doing the labyrinth event and stuff, and they're hopefully gonna try and figure something out for those players. Or you can just be stubborn like me and burn 60 fragile resin as soon as you hit AR 45 and get over the power curve and make it somehow.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a bit rough because, like you were saying earlier, a lot of MiHoYo's target audience, like, is people who are not necessarily whales who buy Battle Pass. And I guess that's like a discussion that we already had. Like, who is their actual like target audience? Who are they making the most money from? But like the Battle Pass Welkin people are probably at least a pretty significant portion of where MiHoYo's revenue is coming from. But it's just sad because a lot of those people are just getting outpaced by the Abyss. So it's like, is MiHoYo trying to make it so that only whales can clear Abyss? Are they like foregoing that audience? Or what are they doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think honestly, Tenten probably has a better, because like, I mean, you understand Mandarin enough to like see what Chinese content creators are talking about, right? Because like, the thing is that the whales and the streamers are not a significant portion of the player base, but they're very influential, right? Because they're more likely to be in contact with members of the dev team, and they have audiences, and like their opinions are going to like kind of percolate through the community because like a big streamer is going to say something and then people are going to be like, yeah, you're right or you're wrong, and it'll cause a bunch of discussion, right? So like if like the big Chinese Genshin content creators are like really dissatisfied and they're like, there's not enough shit to do, then that would probably be driving a certain amount of like Abyss getting harder to just give them stuff to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can actually see that, to be honest, that they think not enough thing to do, especially with Chinese player base are known to more I don't know, I don't say it like whale more. Like they're more. It's like a known culture for Asia to like kind of whales on characters. Like if you look at the ownership rate for like C2 Raiden, for example, and CN is significantly higher than like NA. So you kind of end up having this part where it's like all the Chinese player with their C2 Raiden be like, things are just dying in one click. I want harder things. And then you have like NA player with their C0 Raiden be like, this thing is too hard. Please MiHoYo, nerfing, something like that. And it's really hard to satisfy the two.
Yeah.
And
right,
this
is what's so hard about making games.
Yeah, it's a little bit politics, but you know, everybody knows that China have the bigger, more people, therefore more revenue, and therefore most game like to cater to China. And then you end up having that. But we're not gonna go that far, I think. So
Yeah, I think like even just besides politics, it's just MiHoYo is a Chinese company.
Yeah,
they probably understand Chinese complaints more.
Right, yeah, like they're, you know, we're all like otaku, right? So like they're gonna be on, they're probably lurking NGA and shit, right? And they're like, just like English speaking devs are gonna be on Reddit and Twitter, and they're just gonna see what people say, and like there's no way around it, right? But yeah, I mean, this is what's really hard about games, is you have to make one, especially making like really big games like Genshin. You have to make one game, and that has to satisfy people with all kinds of different play styles and needs from the game. And at a certain point, you're going to have to make decisions that will screw over one population of players and benefit another population of players. And like that's where a lot of the really hard stuff is.
Yeah, I guess that is also a nice segue into is this our next topic? Or is the topic list? I guess it is kind of next, which is like what makes the game good for like TCers / casuals? Like what is a good game for casuals? What is a good game for theory crafters? And is it possible for a game to do both?
well, obviously most of us are TC here, so it's hard for us to experience what it feels like to be a casual. I don't even think people from my chat or from my YouTube channel who are probably watching this podcast are considering themselves casual. So it's probably a pretty difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I would say like at least for theory crafting and theory crafters, what makes the game fun for me is just flexibility and like the amount of things that you can do. Like I cleared Abyss yesterday with Pyro, Overload, EM, Razor, and just like my ability to do that. And play like so weird slash wacky teams, but still make it somehow work just because I have an understanding of game mechanics makes the game pretty fun to me. But that's probably not something that casual players are familiar with because they probably don't know that Razor like even applies Electro to himself. And Bennett Bad Circle applies Pyro to you, which allows you to trigger Overload off yourself. I'm pretty sure a lot of them probably don't know that, so that's not a team that they would be able to play.
Way too Ning.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
This is actually, though, I think a good thing about Genshin, right? Which is that I don't think they actually need to know those things, right? Like, let's say if you have a casual player and they just think Bennett's really cool, and they also think Razor's really cool, and so they just play Bennett and Razor together. And if they just press all their buttons, a bunch of fun explosions are going to happen. There's going to be a bunch of big numbers, and all the monsters are going to die and drop some pretty loot, right? And that's great. And like that is one thing that I think Genshin does really well is the combat system actually works pretty well if you just button mash and just like play who you think is cool. Maybe not for like Abyss 12 or whatever, but for most of the game, it just works. And then it does have this level of depth where like the most engaged players, the highest knowledge players are like, you know, have a specific rotation and like every character, like they're planned out their whole team and every character has a specific amount of energy recharge to make sure everything lines up perfectly. And it like the fact that this same combat system, which works on mobile, by the way, which is crazy, like the fact that it can do that, I think is actually a triumph. Like if you think about it, there's how many buttons do you have available? You have move, you have attack, Q, and E, and switch character, right? And using only those controls, they've built this combat system that can do all of this stuff. I think it's really, really cool. Honestly, like I think that's like this is one of those things that like I think if I wasn't a game designer, I wouldn't like realize how hard it is to do what they did.
Yeah, I remember I was watching. Oh, Art, yeah.
No, Art. It's not even here.
It's
Art's
Art.
dead. I was
Yeah,
gonna
why?
say this is the thing we always end up bringing into not just podcast but every stream, especially Saja always like to talk about who he's unfortunately not here, but he always like to talk about how Genshin combat system is deceptively easy, but after in the depth it's very complicated, which is aka in the highest level, what we do is very, very hard. As you mentioned, we do this like complex rotation where you like, oh, you stay on this character for exactly 5 seconds. Like for example, you stay on Child for exactly 9 seconds, so his cooldown is not too long, and will be exactly back up by the time that XIANGLING will come up and something like that. But it is true that Genshin combat system is very easy to pick up and very easy on the surface because there's only so many buttons. Like you can only press so many input. How hard can it possibly be, right? And so Zaja would really like to talk about this all the time, but unfortunately he's not here.
R.I.P. Zaja.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you ever see the board game Othello and the tagline was "a minute to learn, a lifetime to master"? That's like what all of us as game designers are like dreaming of with the games we make. Like that's the ideal, right? Is that it's like something that's really easy to pick up and play and you can press buttons and make cool explosions and that's fun, but then you can play it for like 10 years and still be discovering things after that. Like those are the best games, right?
Yeah, I remember also watching a YouTube video, I think like a couple months back, where it was talking about Celeste. I think that's the name of the game.
Yeah, it's like
but it was talking about like, yeah,
speedrunning.
you can like do 3 things, but also like speedrunners have figured out all these other things that you can do, which I think is a pretty good analogy for Genshin. Like you press E and Q, but also you can come up with all these complex rotations that takes an Excel sheet, which literally crashes your computer to figure everything out. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, so this stuff is why I think like at its core Genshin is a very, very good game.
I guess this kind of answer our earlier question is like, can Genshin like satisfy a hardcore player and casual player? And actually now I think about it, the answer is it can, because for casual player they just press a button and cool thing happen, but for hardcore player like a video crafter like us, we can use our 500 IQ to figure out things which will satisfy those.
Yeah.
So in
I
that
think
sense,
like the structure is there, and that's the hardest part. To be honest, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I think especially for hardcore players, the biggest issue is there's this tension where I think because of their monetization strategy or just how they've structured the game's like progression systems, they want you to experience Genshin as a game where you log in every single day for 20 minutes, right? And do your commissions or whatever, and it's super quick, right? But I think Genshin is actually much better experienced as a game where when there's new stuff, you come in, you play the new stuff, and then once it's all done, you leave for a while. And like this relates to like one of the, I guess in the games industry, one of the most famous GDC talks of all time. If you don't know, GDC is called Game Developers Conference, and it's like the annual industry convention, and people give talks. And one year, the CEO of Grinding Gear Games, who makes Path of Exile, gave a talk on like how they make the game. And one of the things he said was that the way they structure their leagues, they basically know that you're going to play a league and then you're going to quit PoE because you're going to get bored, and then you're going to come back at the next league. And they're actually completely okay with that. And they've kind of structured the whole way they want you to experience the game in that way. And so I think actually if MiHoYo like approached Genshin with that attitude, which is like, if you think about it, like if you want to progress your characters efficiently, the best thing to do is to log in for a little bit every day, do your commissions, spend your resin, and then log out. Because like, all the other things you could do, like ore farming or like killing elites for Mora or whatever, is just super inefficient. But if instead they like Genshin was a game where it's like, oh, there's a new Inazuma Island, so go do all the stuff, open all the chests. Oh, you're done? Okay, now go away. Like, just quit the game for like 2 months, and we'll send you an email, or you'll hear on social media when the chasm is out, or whatever the next thing they're doing is. And now you can come back and experience. I think everybody would be a lot happier if like the game kind of encouraged you to experience it in that way. But instead, their systems kind of have you logging in every day and doing, commissions, which are like kind of boring, right?
I mean, the flip side of that is, so I play a lot of Destiny, right? And this is not, it's not unique to Destiny. It's actually like part of like the expansion type of game where like the developer is okay with you picking up the game for a little bit when there's new stuff to play and then disappearing when there's not. The problem like for that is that the community becomes like very needy. I don't know how to describe it. So the people that are loudest in these types of games are people who that play the game probably more than like the developer who really has content for. So
Oh, yeah.
discontent is like really high
Yeah, totally.
during periods where there's nothing to do. Like RuneScape that has this, WoW has this, Destiny has this, like these types of, and for like a gacha game, it's pretty unheard of for something like that. But I mean, I think Genshin actually bites the bullet for both of these
Yeah.
things. Like there is, like, if you didn't play back then, but like there's a patch, I think it was 1.3 or 1.4, where there was literally nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Actually nothing to do.
You mean this
And
patch right now?
nobody played those patches. Nobody played them. It was so bad.
Yeah, this happens in FGO
yeah.
too. When there's like
And-
content droughts, people get super salty.
And even, I mean, like, and there's not really like a way to solve it either. Like Blizzard hasn't been able to solve it. Bungie hasn't been able to solve it. Like a lot of the times, like we complain about things like, why doesn't Genshin just add like a replayable loop or like some kind of like, repeatable endgame? The answer I think is like, well, I think they would put it in if they knew how to do it. If someone's cracked the code, for like infinite repeating content that is like fulfilling for a player over and over and over forever and ever, like it would be in games already.
Yeah, like
and
repeatable PvE content is like the holy fucking grail. Everybody is trying to do it, and like this is why everybody's like trying to do roguelike stuff, right? Like everybody's messing with like even. I mean, the Labyrinth kind of like felt like it should have been a roguelike, but I think it actually wasn't. I think it was all kind of planned out. but like, you know, basically like I think a lot of people's ideal game, myself included, is like if you take like an action RPG like Genshin or WoW or whatever, and then give it the replayability of Slay the Spire. And that's like what everybody wants to do, but nobody knows how to do it yet. And, you know, is MiHoYo going to be the people to crack that? Maybe. I don't know. But maybe not. And that's just like a thing that everybody's trying to do, I think.
I kind of wanted to talk about Genshin gameplay loop next, but I guess we're kind of already on it, so we can continue. I guess my biggest thing is like, this has come up all the time. And people always want to ask this. Is like, what do you think of the current Genshin gameplay loop, which is logging in, spending your resin on like 5 trash artifact, and then logging off? And I guess people really want to know about the artifact, like the fall on the RNG artifact system as well. So those are the 2 big things I think people really care. Since
it's hard.
Everyday activity is log in, get 5 bad artifact, log off.
Yeah, it's really hard because like, if this is a really big challenge with making these sorts of progression-based PvE games, right? Is because ideally you want to give players meaningful progression for their time, and so people are constantly getting stronger. However, if you reach a point where there's no point in getting stronger because you outpace all the content, or if you reach a ceiling and there's like nothing else to do, then you quit, because the whole point of this game is these games are the chase. And so it's just really hard to design stuff like that. I mean, like, you know, I played this I loved Epic 7. I played that game for like a year. I was so into it. I was like top 100 on the arena ladder, and at a certain point I realized that like I would log in and like I would look at my characters and I'm like, I cannot upgrade my characters anymore. They're completely capped out. And I basically, as soon as I realized that, I just was not interested, no longer interested in playing the game. So like, the more, it's this really careful balance, because the more satisfying on a day-to-day basis you make something like the artifact grind, the less satisfying, like the less longevity you get out of that system, right? And so like, it's one of those things where any progress you make on one is almost by definition compromising on the other. And so they just have to kind of do their best and guess. I would say Genshin's artifacts are probably on the stingy side, but also if I worked for MiHoYo, I'd be really nervous about making them more like making good artifact rolls more accessible, because you know those will have very scary long-term effects on how long people want to play the game.
Yeah, I think that's just also a good explanation of why MiHoYo like does not want to increase the resin system, not just because they're greedy, but because it'd like actively be bad for the game to just give everyone unlimited resin. Because you would just burn out of the game so fast after like 100% gearing all your characters, and there would just be like no reason to play the game. So ultimately, like I think that the resin system is actually a good thing. One of the reasons why I got so burnt out from FGO and why I play it, like as you were saying earlier, just like every patch I'll drop in, I'll play the story, maybe I'll like roll for 1 or 2 new characters, but then I'll just drop off. And the reason why I did that is just because you get so many like resin or like FGO's version of resin refreshes in FGO that's functionally just like you have infinite for people who aren't like hardcore gaming and just like pretty casual but still play the game pretty decently. Like that was for FGO.
Lotto.
Yeah. Lotto is an entire other thing. But
Yeah.
I just like got burnt out of it because I'm like, I already have level 90 talent or skill level 10. Like, there's honestly just not much more reason for me to continue playing the game. I don't need this, I don't need that anymore. So I just like stopped playing Fate. So I think that's something that MiHoYo actually does pretty well.
I think
Yeah.
Genshin is lacking some kind of like something else. Like I remember like just running around in the overworld and just like I like killing things in Genshin. And like there's a reason why I've been like people play WoW for like how long they have been or have been playing like their favorite MMOs for like so long. I personally have been playing Destiny for like 7 years now, like since the very beginning, there's just like there has to be something to do. And I think Lobo really touched on that, where like the chase is like a huge part of the enjoyment. But I think on top of that, like and Zajev would agree with me here, is that having something to do with the things that you're chasing after probably helps a lot. And I think Genshin is kind of missing like something that in Destiny we call the core playlists, where like the core activities, like the things that you can just do.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, continue. If you're gonna say something.
Honestly, my train of thought got derailed by your stream going to ads, and now like this very like
Oh.
hairy musical artist is like staring deep into my eyes. So yeah, my train of thought just got totally
Oh,
derailed.
it's Twitch is automatically playing that. I forgot to turn it off.
Yeah.
Or...
I mean, I think like honestly, Genshin not being co-op, I think loses a lot here, right? Because like if you think about Destiny, like I used to love grinding strikes with my friends. Like my peak Destiny days was like Taken King, and I would used to like get home from work and log on, and my friends would be on, and we would just kind of grind strikes all night, and it was really fun. But like if we couldn't do that co-op, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it nearly as much. And I think Genshin's like lack of good co-op support is a little tragic, because it is actually, I think, really fun to play it in co-op, but I think they realized it too late that it was a fun co-op game, and they built it as a single player game. And once you do that, like you can't just go back in and add co-op. It's just like you can't do that. And I mean, this is also why PvP games are so much more repeatable, because involving other humans just makes things very interesting in a way that like AI just can't be with our current tools.
Yeah, I would love to see a guild system in Genshin, so we can have a chain main guild. That's the only reason, but I also love to see one.
I want to one-shot Tenten's Venti.
There's a thing I want to talk about.
I want to be able to kill Tenten.
It kind of relates to all the topic we've been talking about, but what I would really like personally to see from Genshin is event artifact. And it kind of acts as a gacha mechanic for a new player, and it's kind of like mediocre artifact that are not as good as the one you can get from farming every single day. But if you're a new player and you only farm for like let's say 4 weeks, let's say a month, you probably don't have that good artifact. In that case, event artifact would probably be better what you have. So they're like the middle of the pack artifact to get you started very quickly. Kind of like a gacha mechanics in that sense. I say this because FGO have event CE, and you probably know this level. It's like all the event CE.
Yeah.
Some of them are really good. There are like some of the events CE are like best in slot.
Golden Sumo.
But you know,
like the servants too. I mean,
yeah,
like,
but the really powerful CE like 2030 are from ultimately are from.
I missed like
30's not event
Ryder
CE.
Kentucky, and I was always salty
Yeah.
about that, you know.
Yeah.
Ryder
like,
Kentucky,
fucking
Archer Chloe,
Yeah. So
Assassin Shiki. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like actually a pretty good, because you remember we were talking earlier about how with the Abyss they have to keep making it harder to keep the old players interested, but it kind of screws over the old players. I think like that, something like that would be a really good compromise, where you give newer players an on-ramp to power themselves up, so you don't face that like huge difficulty cliff. I mean, I think another problem here is just like there isn't a smooth progression of difficulty, right? It's like everything in the game's super easy, and then like Abyss is easy until floor 9, and then 9 to 10 are pretty hard, 11 is very hard, and 12 is extremely hard, right? It's like not smooth at all. Whereas if you think about I mean, like Epic 7, the things you do to farm gear are called hunts, and like each of them has, at least when I was playing, they had 11 different levels, so it's like a very nice ramp of difficulty. World of Warcraft has Mythic Plus dungeons, which ramp up. So maybe like I think this idea of like mid-tier content maybe is something that Genshin could benefit from having.
this is another like hot take by the majority of people, but people always love to talk about floor 13. I don't know if you have any thought or Artesian.
That's just like it's not solving the core issue.
Yeah.
It's just rolling. It's like, it's the meme of like Patrick from SpongeBob going like, let's just put the problem over there.
Yeah.
It's like
This
people are
is-
just gonna clear 13 and then we're gonna be right back where we started.
I kind of actually agree with this too. It's like a lot of people always like to talk about floor 13 as if it was a solution, and I actually disagree. And I guess we can address it very quickly. That is because instead of clearing floor 12 9-star being the final goal, you would just make clearing floor 13 9-star the final goal. So it will end up being the same thing. It's like, oh, either you can floor 13 or you cannot. And so the meta just become floor 13 instead of floor 12. So you're just moving the problem from 12 to 13. And then if you can't clear 13, you end up having the same problem. It's just like, oh, you can clear 13 very easily, you run into the problem of no content, or you cannot clear 413 and you think Genshin is too hard. So I think 413 is not the way to do it. But I just want to quickly cut. It's like everyone always loved talking about floor 13.
How could you treat your Yoimiya like that, by the way, Tenten?
You really just ran her off a cliff.
I don't do it on purpose.
Actually, I was thinking. I've been kind of thinking about that as you were saying that, and I think actually a version of that would work maybe is kind of like the last thing of the Labyrinth event that just happened. Like, what if floor 13 was exactly the same as floor 12, but just like X% harder, and then it just kept going, and you could, and like there are no rewards. It's just bragging rights. You can just keep clearing higher and higher as long as you can do it. Like that might actually, like, because like that does not take a lot of dev time or resources, right? It's like just math. You don't have to develop any new content.
That's cool.
And
actually.
like for like the people like Tony Toe or whatever, like people can compete. Like you see this in World of Warcraft, right? Because like with Mythic Plus dungeons, like the highest level that like rewards will scale as you go higher until level 15. And after level 15, that's the highest it goes, right? But people are clearing 30s, and like, why are they doing that? Just for the bragging rights, because like there's this leaderboard called Raider.io, and people want to be at the top of the leaderboard, and they want to like have the bragging rights, right? So like something like that actually might work too, and might like keep, like I could imagine Tony Toe or whatever would want to be like, oh yeah, world first Abyss 20, like check out my C6 Raiden with 100 200 crit rate, crit damage, or whatever the fuck,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It would just basically, like, for people who might not understand, they basically just make a lot of floor after floor 12, but every single floor is the exact same lineup as floor 12, except with like each floor is say like 10% higher HP and 10% more damage that you take or something like that. So like floor 13 would be exact same as floor 12 except 10% more HP, and then 14 would be same as floor 12 except 20% more HP and something like that.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it would have no rewards. It'd be completely voluntary. So it's not a chore. It's just there for the people who want it. Are you gonna... Oh my god, you almost drowned again.
Yeah, but I think that it doesn't even have to be like the same exact thing. Like you see this with Bloons TD6, where everything after round 100 is just randomly generated. And it just scales. Each round gets like progressively harder. The Bloons have more health. Whatever. And some people just do like up till around 500 just because fun to see how far you can go. And like maybe I don't know how MiHoYo would do like randomly generated Abyss, if that's even possible. But I think just having something like that would be fun as well.
I think actually in this case it's better to not randomly generate it, because this way you like can so this is actually a thing I think Genshin does fairly poorly compared to other gacha games. To like use Epic 7 as an example, like the boss I mentioned earlier, where it's like, I'm gonna spam you with poison, you have to cleanse, right? So Epic 7 would be like, there's this content and you have to build a team to specifically to take this down, right? And like this will force you to leverage characters you might not have used otherwise. And I think Genshin is not very good at this, right? Like I remember one of the reasons I quit when it first came out is like I got Diluc, who was obviously like the best character, or considered the best character at the time, and I realized that basically I could destroy the whole game with just him, unless it was something with a fire shield or like a fire slime or something like that. And I was like, oh well, this is boring, and so I quit. right? So I think Genshin could do better at this, and I like this idea of like, oh, floor 12 has like this specific combination of characters. So like I remember people discussing, maybe it was on this podcast, people discussing like Freeze Child being a really good comp, like this abyss specifically, because I think in 12.3 there's like the 3 robots or whatever. I think that's good. Like, so I think in this case actually you don't want to randomly generate them. You want to like let people specifically prepare a team comp or a strategy and see how far they can take it.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. Yeah, that was I think last week that maybe it was 2 weeks ago that we were talking
It's
about
like
Freeze Child.
probably last week. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Am I,
But
am
I
I
guess that
talking
does
too
make
much,
sense.
by the way? I feel like I'm like kind of
No, you're
rambling
good.
a little bit,
No,
so I
you're good.
apologize if I'm doing that.
Attention is bien.
No, I'm here. I mean, like, the only games I've ever played are like
Destiny.
Riot games or like Destiny. Yeah, like
He doesn't have the
like,
experience.
if I want to
Hell
bring
no,
it back, if I
Sabe,
want to
you
bring
don't
it,
know.
yeah, if I want to bring it back to Destiny, like the game also has like the same problem.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the end of the end, I mean Warframe. I mean, I used to play Warframe as well. The end of Warframe has the same problem. Like when you run out of things to chase, there's not enough game for you to destroy.
Yeah.
At the end of Destiny, at the end of Warframe, you become so powerful. You have so many things that there's nothing worthwhile for you to do anymore except push
Yeah.
yourself.
And-
And at least in games like WoW and in parts of Destiny, you can do things to make the game harder. Like you can self-impose like all sorts of things. Like in Destiny, you can do raids or like things like that with less people than intended. You can do all sorts of things like that. But in Genshin, there's not really a system for anything like that. The Abyss is hard, but it's not that hard for people to really challenge themselves. Every version of a Genshin one shot is just a more and more elaborate setup that more or less requires the same amount of time. And the best setups just one shot the floor or one shot one wave and then the next wave. Um, there's nothing that like this is probably one of the things that Genshin probably isn't able to really address. Like even if we had a tower climb that was like randomly seeded every month so that the floors were the same for everyone all the time, it would be pretty difficult to beat people that just one shot every floor with like things like Eula. Um there's nothing that could stop like a C6 Eula, not even like the things that are supposed to counter physical. So I mean it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the classic problem of PvE live service games. This is like a fact of psychology that game designers talk about a lot, which is if you like this has been studied like fairly conclusively. If you take an activity that somebody enjoys intrinsically, as in they enjoy it because they think it's fun and they don't need an external reward for it, and then you give them an extrinsic reward for doing that task, they'll be very happy because it's something they already enjoy. Now they're getting rewarded for it, right? So that's great. But then once you take that extrinsic reward away, then they no longer enjoy it intrinsically. And this is just like a unfortunate psychological fact of humans that is at the root of this problem, right? Because in all of these games, you're playing the game because it's fun. Like Destiny is a great example of this because the core gameplay of Destiny is so good, right? Like people get into Destiny because Bungie is like best in the world at making like guns that are really fun to shoot, and like the enemies are fun. So like fighting stuff in Destiny is fun, and so you do this fun activity, you fight enemies, and then you get cool loot, and you become more powerful, and that's great. And that's really awesome until there is no more loot that can make you more powerful. And now you no longer enjoy this activity you once enjoyed because you've been conditioned to expect extrinsic rewards from it. And like this problem occurs across every single one of these games. Like again, gacha games, Destiny, Diablo, World of Warcraft, all of them. And everybody's trying to figure it out, and yeah, nobody really has yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it would be good for Genshin to, because like Tenten covered the Genshin Championship and all that a couple days back, and I was looking at like the view counts on it. You're like those Genshin Championship videos go like so many views. So I think if Genshin added something that like could allow you to compete rather than having to go through like do a third party to compete, like going on Discord and asking your friends like, hey, do you want to do a Genshin Championship thing? Like if Genshin was able to add something like that into the game, I think that would be very healthy. But also it's like it's kind of like the extrinsic reward thing where if Genshin adds that into the game, are they going to give rewards to the people who win that? And is that going to make people not motivated to do it anymore? Or what's going to go on with that? And yeah, it's just like no one else has managed to figure it out. I don't do game design, so I don't really know the answer, or like even have a semblance of an answer. So yeah, it's just difficult. Anyways, yeah,
Like the Genshin Championship series, like I think it was super cool. Like the pig ban, like building team comps with restrictions that are like being imposed, like that's cool. But like again, the problem I think like even if they did add something like that, how many people like I mean, this is great for like the upper end of players, right? Like this is fantastic. Building teams to counter like a certain abyss with all sorts of restrictions that require you to have like theory crafting knowledge. That's really cool. But it's not even about like the accessibility. I think it's just oh, I mean, like again, it's just I don't know. I don't know if that's like a feasible solution or a plausible solution for something like end game for Genshin.
I think this particular issue is like a downstream consequence of Genshin being the type of game that it is, because it's like a high budget action RPG. Characters are expensive to make, and so they don't have that many characters, right? Like if you look at other gacha games, like they'll have 5 to 10 times as many characters as Genshin. I think I actually was looking like Epic 7 has, I mean, it's been out for longer than Genshin, but Epic 7 has, I think, like 105 different 5-star characters, whereas Genshin has 20, I think. So, like, because of that, then it takes a long time to train up any individual character, which means that this stuff that we're talking about, like, it's like I think this is one reason like why it feels so bad in Genshin when you encounter content like Azdaha, where it's like, oh, you better have a shield or else you're kind of fucked, or corrosion or whatever, because like in other gacha games there's enough characters that you probably either have already invested in somebody who can kind of take care of your problem, or it's like a week's worth of grinding to train the character you need. Whereas in Genshin, it would be like a month or 2 months. But I do also think that like I agree that the Genshin championships are really cool, and I think it shows like the power of like making restrictions, right? Like this is one thing that's like, oh, the meta comps are so powerful. Well, yeah, but what if we just like either through some sort of pick ban phase or whatever, what if you just can't play Child this month? We ban Child, we remove him from the game for a month. So what do you do now, right? And like for the endgame players who have the ability to adapt to that, it's a really fun and interesting challenge, I think.
yeah, if you ban child for a month, I know some of the TC staff would get very screwed over by that because they're child mains. But yeah,
not me.
I think that's interesting.
I hate that guy.
What the okay, Art. I don't know if we want to transition to about the labyrinth, which everyone always likes to ask about, especially it's still on their finger right now. Yep.
I think it ended. Did it?
I mean,
Or
we've
is it
kind of
still
already
on?
been
I
talking
don't know.
about it. no?
Yeah, because we were
I mean,
talking
we've
about
already
how no reward is a good thing, because once you add a reward, it's like a chore. And currently the last stage of the labyrinth is a no reward roguelike thing. I don't know how to describe it. Okay, whatever. You guys probably know what it is. If you guys don't know what it is, I unfortunately have a gameplay video on it, so you can check that out. But what do you think of? I guess we can start with the more obvious question. It's like, what do you think of the Labyrinth event, especially in regard to the last stage?
I think it's a good try. I think it's much better than the Abyss, because there's like exploration and there's like moving through the different rooms and there's some strategy about which charms to take and all of that. I think it has a ways to go before I would consider it like really good, repeatable endgame content. But to me, like my take looking at it is like that this is obviously a try, like that they're trying to develop better endgame content than Abyss. And I think that this is like a good direction. I guess honestly, like the big things for me is that I think like a lot of the like exploration or traversal felt a little bit underbaked. Like it was kind of like just keep your eyes peeled for the cursed zones and don't step in them, and like don't whack a screen with a explosive barrel behind it unless you get the charm that allows you to ignore that and not care about it, which I would always take because I didn't want to think that hard. I guess like I think like for example the open world exploration in Inazuma is so good that like it's I want to see an outdoor version of that, right? Because like so much of Genshin is about like climbing and stuff like that. And so if you set something like that indoors, you can't climb anything. And like I don't know if you guys ran into this problem, but there's like that one little room where you could like drop down and there's usually like a treasure, and then there's like a fucking
Yeah.
stack of crates up to the ladder, and it was so hard to jump on the crates because you couldn't
Oh.
climb on them. And I'm like, what? Like, just let me fucking climb on the crates. Like, put this in a cave. Don't put this in a house, right? Like, it's so fun exploring the Inazuman ruins and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I would want to see them lean into the exploration side a little bit more. And also, I think the charms could be improved because my take was that the charms are very binary. Like, they're either completely useless or it's like, oh yeah, you know, because like the team I'd always run is like I have my indestructible challenging content team, which is Raiden, Xingqiu, Bennett, and Jean. And it just never dies to anything ever. And so like the charms would be like I would get like, oh, your team deals 20% more physical damage, and I'm like, cool, I don't give a shit about that at all. Or it would be like, oh, every character gets 30% bonus electro damage, and I'm like, cool, now I just do 30% more damage. Great, awesome, right? So if they could make the charms more interesting, I think that would also be cool.
Yeah, one other thing about it was the talismans. Like, I don't think I used those things a single time
Oh yeah, that was a
because,
totally
like,
dead mechanic to me too.
yeah,
Yeah, I
you
just
like
never
had to
used them.
press T and like select one. I was like, I don't want to do this. It's probably gonna literally the time that it took for me to to decide on and activate a talisman. I probably could have spent that time doing more damage, just like autoing with my child or battering my XIANGLING or something.
Yeah,
And I think having that be more interesting in some manner, maybe something like what they did with the tower defense, where you just like get more levels on X. Maybe it's just like you do more pyro damage now, or you do more cryo damage now. You can upgrade your characters in some sense rather than giving them talismans.
Ooh,
I think would be interesting.
I think they can make something like the same thing but with passive effect. So like you jump twice as high, which allow you to plunge, or you attack ranges is twice as long or something, which allow you to like snipe far away from Yoimiya. I'll be honest, the biggest problem I have with the event is that it's fundamentally not challenging just because it's cheesable. Like everyone would like to comment on my video is like, this event is so easy, you can just cheese it with Zhongli or Noel. Like if you just use one of those characters, then the event is like it defeats the purpose in my opinion. It's like because it's cheesable. I don't know. I guess you're familiar with the concept of stall team in FGO, where you just spend 300 turns. Like I don't consider that to be a valid strategy. I just consider it to be a cheese, and I don't really want to see that. But I guess the side effect is like unless you add something like a timer, then it will always be cheesable.
well, it's a timer, but also I think the thing that's missing here is attrition, right? In roguelike games, attrition is really important because if that's not a factor, then like if healing is as available like, you know, healing is extremely available in Genshin, right? Like I can just stack my Bennett with energy recharge and I can cast Q all the time, and then all my or Jean, right? Like literally every single time I press Q on Jean, my whole team is at full health. I don't even have to think about it. So if any combat encounter is going to threaten me in this environment, it has to one shot. That's the only way it can be meaningfully threatening. So I think they would have to like limit how much you can heal. So like they're, you know, because obviously like, you know, the touchstone for like really good challenging PvE like roguelike is Slay the Spire, right? And attrition is hugely important because it's so hard to heal yourself up. And that means that every fight means something, because if you have 70 health and you lose 10 of it in a fight, that actually has like important implications for how the rest of your run is going to go. Whereas the same situation in Genshin, like if I finish a fight and everybody's at a quarter health even, I just switch to Jean and press Q, and then I just don't care and I move on with my life. So I think
Just remove healing from Genshin. Thoughts?
I mean, I don't think they
Reach.
can do that. They would have to do something more clever than that, I think.
You know,
Only cheat
I've been
sheet.
thinking about this since the beginning of the podcast, but I unironically think Vagabond is necessary. Because, so Lobo doesn't know, but he didn't play it in that era. The Vagabond event is, I think, arguably by far the hardest event, but also the least enjoyable event by most people. Because it did exactly that. It had a lot of negative debuff, such as your shield is now half the strength, your cooldown is now twice as long, your cryo damage would only do half the damage, so you have to bring a pyro DPS instead of a cryo. And these are all things we have been describing throughout this podcast about how to make challenging content. And unironically speaking, they did have that in Genshin, and it was not very enjoyable for most people. But to be honest, I actually think it's necessary, because it what's actually bring out those type of stuff. It's like, oh, now you have to think about, instead of running Morgana every single combat, you have to run something else.
I actually think that I agree. I think we talked about it a long time ago. Like maybe in the first like the 0th TC podcast, that abyss floors were like a puzzle that you had to solve when you were super like early on in the game. Like for example, that floor 11 one where like there was a bunch of archers, then you had to protect the little monolith in the middle. Like a lot of the floors were like puzzles, and the Vagabond event was one of those types of puzzles. It was a fixed encounter with crippling debuffs that practically enacted like character embargoes, right? There was some of them where you literally could not use some characters because either A, they sucked balls to begin with, or two, they sucked balls after the debuffs went through. So yeah, I mean, like, this is like, I think it is also kind of necessary. Um
Yeah. I don't know if you're watching my screen right now, Lobo, but I'm trying to show off what the Vagabond. So you see they have these debuffs, which is like using an elemental burst decrease the crit rate of your entire party members, so it disincentivizes you from using elemental burst and stuff.
Mark Knights, where you like have to pick the ways it's more challenging. So I think this is like a decent idea. I'm not surprised that people didn't like it, because like Genshin, I think the fundamental reason a lot of people like to play Genshin is that there's cool characters who do cool things, right? And what an event like that is saying is like, hey, your cool character that you like, they can't do the cool thing anymore. It's not good. Like, oh, you have your healing is 80% reduced. Sucks for you. Do something else, right? And like there's like a classic tale of game design where when they were making World of Warcraft, they had a system called fatigue, where if you kept playing for a really long time, you would start getting an experience penalty. and people fucking hated it. And they're like, why are you punishing me from playing the game? This sucks. And so rather than removing it, what they did was they just nerfed the experience gain of everything in the game and turned the fatigue system into the rested experience system, where it became a bonus if you haven't played for a while. And then nobody complained and people loved it, right? So like these sorts of framing things are really powerful. And so I think you can kind of get the same effect by saying, like, you could do, imagine a version of the Vagabond event where instead of picking penalties, you pick from a series of very powerful bonuses. And the content is tuned in such a way that you have to really leverage those bonuses in order to actually clear it. So like, yeah, maybe like, I don't even fucking know what Shinyan does, but maybe it's like, oh, your fire greatsword units deal 10 times as much damage when they have a shield or whatever, right? And so like now you're like, oh cool, like this is Shinyan's moment, and then she like goes in there and she does like a kajillion damage, and it's like, oh, that's so cool, right? And whereas like, you know, the what they actually did with Vagabond is something more like, if you don't have a fire greatsword unit that has a shield, you do a bunch less damage, right? And like those are actually like mathematically kind of the same thing, but one feels way cooler than the other. Does that make sense?
I mean,
It's
we've already had something like
it's
this.
interesting, yeah, because we actually did have that. I don't remember what
It's
it's called.
energy amplifier. So, the problem with that is that the enemies in Genshin don't scale that very well when you give the strongest units in the game the strongest buffs in the game.
Right, yeah. That makes sense, right?
There was like this one buff. I don't know if you guys played energy amplifier, but it would spawn a hydro amber every time you like used your elemental burst.
Oh yeah.
The problem is if you used it and you had Ganyu, they would just never unfreeze because
It's like
there would
the
always be
hydro shaman.
hydro.
It's basically just imagine a hydro shaman on your team.
Oh my god.
That's what they did, and it was kind of
Hydro, what are those things called? Summaturals?
Yeah, so much.
That'd be like the best hydro. That'd be like the best character in the game, the best support unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone.
I
loves to
remember
talk about.
before Kokomi's kit got released, all the TCers were like, if Kokomi just makes it rain, like she just summons rain to the field, she's just gonna be so good. Like she doesn't even have to do anything else. But yeah.
Actually, yeah. I actually kind of want to like touch on that again. Sorry, Hazel.
Yeah,
Like,
you're good.
Let me just like go over it again. Like the thing isn't that it wasn't just that the buffs made the strongest characters in the game just destroy everything. It also was like, because the buffs were so powerful, the enemies had to scale with it. But the thing is, the buffs weren't strong enough or weren't specific enough to make the shittiest characters good. Like,
Yeah.
like the Hydro Amber buff will not make Amber good, but it will make Ganyu and make Hu Tao very, very strong. So like, yeah, it just
Right, but
it
like,
didn't- yeah.
I think that that's not necessarily an issue with the concept. It's just an issue with the execution, right? Because like I said, you can get super duper specific, and you could easily make you could easily like seed, like you can say there's 5 bonuses, and like one only works with Xinyan, one only works with Yanfei, one only works with Chi Chi, one only works with God, I don't know who else is bad. Razor, I guess, but like Razor isn't even bad. You kind of get what I'm saying, right? It's like, yeah, when you say that like this, there's this like thing that does a hydrosometral thing. I'm like, oh, obviously this is like a really good buff that the very best character in the game can leverage, right? But like, you don't have to do that specific thing. You can do lots of other different things.
Yeah, I think the issue is just that a lot of the best characters in the game are so good because they can take advantage of these things.
Yeah.
Like Ganyu's very good because she has flexibility in that. I mean, this is one of the reasons she's good, but she has flexibility in that she can play both freeze and she can play melt. Child is very good because he synergizes well with XIANGLING and functions as a very good enabler in addition to dealing a lot of damage, which makes him a very good team player. And it's definitely possible for them to like make these hyper specific buffs that would benefit only a couple characters. The issue is just Mihoyo would have to be really good about doing that because the good characters in this game are good because they take advantage of these things well.
Yeah.
Snapshotting kicked weight.
Yeah. character named
I
Gani
mean,
will have
there's
0
also
aim.
that there's also Hyakunin Iki. Those buffs were pretty specific.
Yo, yeah, I
And
like
even
that
then,
event. That was
it
fun.
couldn't. Even then, that couldn't make like the shittiest characters usable.
How am
Well,
I?
yeah, but that's because they had like
Hyakunin Iki also got too difficult at the end for you to like, get the platinum medals and stuff.
Wait, which event is that?
that was the one where you had like 6 pairs and you had to cycle through them.
Oh,
I
Oh,
liked
is it
that
that-
event. I
I
thought
like
that
that
was
one
really
a lot.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like that one was like there were very obviously buffs that were like meant. There's like, oh, you have a super plunging damage buff, and hey, we're gonna give you a free shout too. So you're like, huh? I wonder what I should do with that. But like, I mean, if they're gonna do something like that, I think they put Yanfei in there. I think I used Yanfei because there was something she was synergistic with, and I think I would like switch to her and do like one charge attack and then switch to the next team as soon as I could or something.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that type of thing. There's probably a way to do it that's good. It's just if MiHoYo honestly cares enough, right? Because like all the time they put into trying to figure that out is time that they're not building Sumeru, and Sumeru's probably going to be fucking sick, and I want to play it, so I don't even as like a very hardcore engaged player, I don't know if I would rather have them doing that than building Sumeru faster, So
Mhm. Yeah, I guess it's just like it kind of gets into the who are we appealing to? Are we appealing to the people who play a lot, or are we appealing to the people who they're just familiar with the game? They might log in once every like couple months to play Inazuma or whatever, and that's just like hard because like we're not MiHoYo, we don't know what their like I guess user statistics look like.
yeah, and I
Uh,
think we can guess what their user statistic looks like based on what they're doing, right?
mhm.
And what they're doing is they're kind of leaning towards the second, so that's probably who plays the most Genshin,
Yeah.
yeah. For people who doesn't know, in game dev, there's a very important metric called player ventilation, which is how many players decide to keep playing your game after like a week or something like that. And that's pretty much like what they care. It's like, oh, you come back. If you play for a week, good enough for me. I don't care if you don't stay after that. All you have to do is play for that 1 week. I think something like that. Any
No.
thoughts, Artesian? Or I don't know.
I mean, I would bring up something about Destiny again.
I think we were
Go ahead.
done.
That's fine.
I mean, Destiny's
the devs, so Bungie has like specifically stated like they're building their game to be like that, and I wouldn't be surprised if MiHoYo was something like that. Like the events are there for like specific amounts of time, they're gated and stuff like that. So like they kind of incentivize you to do things daily, and it's pretty hard to play like everything all at once at the end of a patch. But other games like will take a different approach where they're like, yeah, just whenever there's stuff to do, you guys can come back. We don't really give a shit. And I don't know. Like I said, like Genshin kind of bites a bullet for both things. You have like the monthly events and like the weird fucking mini games they add, like hide and seek or fucking whatever they want to add, or like the third Osu ripoff or whatever. Like they'll add like whatever the fuck they want, and then they'll like they'll try another iteration of something that's at the end of the game, and fail, whatever, and they'll still work on things like Sumeru in the background. So I don't know. It's hard to really
Yeah.
say. And like,
There's also the limited characters too, which I really don't like limited characters in any gacha game. But especially in Genshin, I like as a player, I would very much prefer if everybody was in the standard banner, cuz like that's actually like a lot of pressure to keep playing. Is like if I'm not playing when Ganyu reruns, and if I ever come back to the game, I'm gonna be like, fuck, I missed Ganyu again, right? And like I don't know. I just
not to
think
mention that you have to play every day to even get the currency to roll.
yeah,
Forever.
totally right. So like I don't like that stuff. Like I think it would be a lot cooler personally, like if Yeah, I roll on the standard banner and I get Zhongli or something out of the blue. That's really cool and awesome and fun. But
Actually, I actually wanted to talk about this. Lobo, you want to know something like really funny? Like this is probably like one of the most poorly designed systems in Genshin.
hmm
So if you're a new player, right, and you want, and let's say like maybe you came back and you're like AR 40, you roll Raiden, Ayaka, Toma, Yoimiya, or any of these characters, you
hmm
actually can't level them up
Oh
until
yeah,
you
yeah,
like
yeah.
finish Inazuma.
Yeah, that's no, I actually experienced that. So, uh, my fiance got into Genshin when I started playing it again because she saw the teapot and she, really likes Animal Crossing. So she's like, I
Mhm.
want to do that. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I saw her playing and she, she was just like kind of struggling through the game with Amber. And I was like, I cannot stand watching this. And so I like grabbed her phone and I just pulled Yoimiya for her. Right. Which is also works out because like she really likes her personality, and Yoimiya, Yoimiya is like a very you press E and then you attack and everything dies, and it's like really simple. You don't really have to. She's not really that hard to play, right? So like, um, I was like, cool, this is great. I get to play this game with my fiance. This is gonna be so fun. And she was like, oh yeah, okay, so I'm trying to like level her up, and I need this material. And I click on it. It's like, oh, it's the fucking thing you get from the pyrohypostasis. And she's like, fucking AR-25, and like just barely got to Liyue. And I'm like, fuck, man, this is terrible. like, I don't know. It's bad for sure. Um, I don't know. There's a number of things you could do. Like you
I
could,
can only imagine what it's gonna be
yeah,
like. Like we're like 4 regions in. Oh yeah, if you want to level up the Hydro Archon, you actually have to play through all of Inazuma or all of Liyue, all of Inazuma, all of Sumeru, and then you gotta finish the Vontage storyline, homie.
yeah. Isn't like Densleaf gonna supposed to be a playable character? And so it's like you start the game because he's really cool, and you pull him on the banner. It's like cool. You have to play through
Yeah,
all
I have
7 regions and then go to Conraya, and then you can upgrade him. This just would be
I've
really
got some questions about their enemy scaling. Okay,
bad.
like Inazuma's enemies are pretty high level this stuff, but like where do we go from here?
Oh god, level 100 enemy coming. Okay. Well, there's a thing I want to bring up. I don't know if we're going off track unless we're done. But I know because Lobo talked about this a little bit before. But our certain unit too strong and potential limited design space, namely Bennett Sing Shields, which I actually am currently using. Unless
Yeah.
do we want to head there right now, or are we finished? Not finished with this. This is what I want.
We can talk a bit
It's
more.
like 1 in the morning for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting pretty late.
Yeah.
My TLDR answer of that is yes, and if I was them, I would bite the bullet and nerf them. Xingqiu, Bennett, even like Beto, just a lot, and Xiangling, just a lot of the, because like if you think about it, right, it really sucks that Raiden and Beto don't work together. They really should, but like they actually can't make them work together because the combination would just be like so strong. And so the alternative is either you nerf Raiden. So there's like 3 options, right? Which is they don't work together, which is what we got, or you nerf Raiden, or you nerf Beto. And I think like nerfing Beto is actually the best option out of the 3. And I think they've actually gotten really good at shot calling the power unit level of their units recently. Like if you look at Kokomi, Raiden, Yoimiya, Kazuha, like I think they all have like pretty good places in the meta, and they're not like completely meta breaking or anything. But the release 4 stars are just all too crazy, and I think they should just bite the bullet and nerf them. Honestly.
Yeah, it's just kind of hard because it's like, what about this person who is like a Bennett main and they invested so many resources into Bennett? Like, are you just
Yeah.
gonna tell them we're just nerfing your character? It's just
I think
hard.
you should nerf Bennett's healing. Straight up.
I
Fuck that
think,
guy.
yeah, I think Bennett removing the healing from Bennett would be fine. He being able to give a massive attack boost and heal is too much. I think having
Yeah.
one or the other, probably keeping the attack boost would be a good.
I mean, it's not even just that. It's like the attack boost, the ability to tank everything, the cleanse, And then on top of that, he can do damage like just by himself. It's not
Yeah.
just him as a support. He's just
And
too strong. Just
Xingqiu
too strong.
has the same problem too, right? Where he does a bunch of damage, best in class Hydra application. He gives you damage reduction and some healing too. It's just like Beto, right? Beto has
Don't
crazy
forget the
damage.
multiplicative-
She has a
the only
shield.
multiplicative constellation.
Yeah, like yeah, I think yeah, like not rather than like nerfing their numbers or something like that, it's just each of these characters does too many things and they should probably do fewer things. Like Bennett, for example, I think definitely just being he would be so good just as an attack buffer that like you could probably just remove the heal and you'd still be really amazing. You could remove the DR from Xingqiu. I don't think anybody would care. You know, things like that. I don't know. They're
It's
just
hard.
overloaded.
It's hard to answer.
It's pretty hard to answer, but I think it's one that people would like some insight on.
I mean, this is the hard thing about making gacha games, right? Is that like it's so hard to change characters after they're out, especially nerfing them, because yeah, there's somebody's favorite character. If it's a 5-star, they paid real money for that character, right? So you have to just kind of call your shot, and like it's really hard to tell how strong a character is going to be before they come out. Like really, really, really hard. I mean, if you think about like a game at the scale of Genshin, the first hour a character is released, they're going to be played several thousand times more like player hours than the entire lifetime of that character's dev time, because there's just so many people playing the game. And I don't know how many people at MiHoYo work at Genshin, probably 500, 1,000 if like you're really stretching it, right? So you just have to kind of guess and hope you're right. And I think they're doing a really good job recently, but the release 4 stars, I think they overshot.
500 kick weight. That's sound like a lot.
I don't know. Have you heard the legends that CBT2 XIANGLING used to be even more broken?
Yeah, I remember actually. I distinctly remember.
It was like
before
a 40
Genshin came out.
Spironado and like a 6-second Gooba.
Yeah, I remember before one of my favorite Arknights, because I was playing Arknight at the time, and one of my favorite Arknights content creators, a YouTuber named Dreamy. I don't know if she's still.
Oh yeah,
doing...
she actually makes Genshin content as well.
Yeah. Well, she like switched over to Genshin, and like her thing was like, oh yeah, XIANGLING's just fucking beast unit, and I was like, cool, okay. And then when the game came out, it's like, oh, XIANGLING was nerfed, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess she's not that good anymore. And now that I like come back, you know, in August, and it's
actually.
like, yeah, actually, she's still a god tier unit. So I think like, oh god, what if they hadn't nerfed her, you know?
Dreamy is ahead of us. Wow, profit. I think she left. I don't know why. I think she left.
I don't
It's hard
know.
to make Genshin content.
Yeah.
It's hard to make Genshin content. It's very hard to make Genshin content. So prime sub now.
Wow, selling out. I think though, like,
yeah, poor Tenten doesn't make enough as a software engineer. He needs those.
yeah, software engineer living in LA doesn't even make a 7-figure salary.
Well,
I mean, to be fair, cost of living in LA is
bragging.
super duper fucking high.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. Yeah.
I'm literally paying for like free flight ticket to New York right now. Please. Okay. Anyway,
Did you want to talk? Did you want to tell them about your New York plans, or
we can do that after
we're about to?
we can do that at the ending of the podcast, unless we're
Yeah, we can
ending
like end the podcast. and do that.
You wanna-
We're ending
Yeah,
now,
it feels like
running over.
we're yeah.
okay. So I guess we're gonna end the podcast here. We're gonna take questions after. I don't know if Lobo is staying. I think he would probably stay for a little bit. I think because he really like talking about game
I
design.
can stay.
So you
Yeah.
guys can drop your question. But just a quick announcement is that we, as in Kachin Mains, and I are going to be heading to Anime NYC for the Genshin Toyo Fest and potentially other stuff. We're probably going to be doing some IRL stream. Maybe I'll do a VOD of that event. I know a lot of the other Genshin content creators are also going. Like, I heard from many people that they're going to be going, so maybe we'll potentially hang out with them as well. So we'll look forward to that. But otherwise,
No,
that's
they don't want to hang out with us.
We're not cool enough. For
Oh,
them.
okay. Well, I'll clip this part of the stream and forward them to them. Okay. But yeah, I think that's it for announcement. I know there's a lot of questions that everyone like to ask. Unfortunately, of course, we can't go for every single one of them. So apologize, but yeah.
I mean, we can just we can peace out and do our exits. So yeah, I can even do 10 tens for him. Okay, I'm Artesians. You can find me on here sometimes. You can find me on Discord. Yeah, I do stuff these days. I'm busy. Busy with graduate school, so I'm kind of hanging around. You can check out Tenten stuff on his YouTube channel and his Twitch. And you can join his Discord and all that good stuff. And then if Azel wants to exit,
Yeah. I love how Tenten, you still just have me as head of theory crafting, just like all theory crafting ever done in the universe on Genshin. But yeah, I'm Azel. You can sometimes find me on KQM. I stream, just not as frequently as or on the KQM account as well. I also just go around to other people's channels with the KQM Twitch account. So if you see me hanging out like Xiox or OK Code, or if you see the KQM account there, it's probably me. And you can also just find me on Discord. So yeah, Lobo.
Yeah. I do not make content. Well, I do make content, but it's in the form of video games. You can catch me on Twitter / it's Lobo. I do not talk about what I work on because I'm working on secret stuff. I mostly shitpost and meme, but I'm always happy to chat about game design. If you want to ask me any questions about game design stuff, as long as it's not about like unreleased content or anything like that, I'm happy to chat. Or if you want to talk about like how to get a career in games, stuff like that, anything like that, yeah, just hit me up.
Cool. All right, I'll be ending the recording here, and